Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Uncut Thread, a chat series exploring the world of quilting through conversation with special guests. And each week, we examine the ideas, the traditions, and creative practices that shape quilting as both a craft and an art. My name is Cheryl Hills, and I'm your host for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We're really glad that you're here, and we look forward to a thoughtful discussion. Today's discussion explores one of the most talked about and possibly controversial topics in modern quilting, and that is artificial intelligence in quilt design. Our topic we're going to cover today is, should quilters be using tools like ChatGTP or AI image generators to brainstorm pattern ideas? Or is AI simply just a modern sketchbook and creative assistant, or does it cross the line into removing authenticity and even the soul of the art? I have a special guest with me today who is totally immersed in using AI in her quilting. Her name is April Padalino, and I'd like to give April a few moments to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is April Padalino, as Cheryl said, and my little company name is Artisan Creeks and Artisan Creek Studio, and that is where I do a little bit of educating people about AI and quilting. Um, I got into quilting collage only about a year ago, and I started adding AI to it um, just recently, like in January. But I have done a lot of research about it to find out, how ethical it is to use it in your art and what are the best ways to use it in your art to keep your art actually art.
Well, welcome, April, to the conversation today. I think we'll
Thank
have
you.
a very lively and thoughtful discussion today.
Yes.
But before we get into talking about AI specifically for quilting, I just want to go through a couple of definitions and terminology so that if anybody doesn't understand exactly what it is, I'll just give you sort of a layman's high level view of what artificial intelligence is. And artificial intelligence is a technology that allows computers and machines to perform tasks that normally require human thinking. Right? It can learn from information we give it, it recognizes patterns, it can solve problems, it can create content, and it can make decisions based on that data, and it can start to learn us a little bit. So some examples of how AI is used, it can be your Siri or your any kind of smart speaker you have. I won't say the name of mine because she'll start talking. It could be any recommendations for Netflix or YouTube. It could be a chatbot like GPT. It could be what you use to navigate on the road with GPS. So that is really what AI, as of today, is being used for. Now, there's some terms within AI that I think are important that may come up in our discussion today. And so I'm just going to go through a couple of important terms and their definitions. Machine learning, right? That's where the AI computers learn from all of the examples and the data and the information that's put into it. And that's what it uses to perform its tasks. So you may put in your Spotify list and AI will put that all together for you. Generative AI is AI that can create or generate things like images and music and videos or stories or text. If you wanted to write a book or a story or a poem, you can actually ask AI and the generative process will produce that for you. Prompts. A prompt is a really important term because that's how you're going to get AI to perform whatever task it is you want it to do. So, an example of a simple prompt would be create an image of a geometric inspired quilt. And that's what you would put into your AI, and you would have it create whatever you want via a prompt. Now, once you put those prompts in, it's going to rely on algorithms. And an algorithm is just a set of rules that a computer uses just to solve a problem or complete a task. So your AI will go into an algorithm and start using that to generate the answer to whatever prompt you put in. And then a neural network. It's just a computer system that's designed to somewhat work like our human brains by recognizing patterns and just learning from the experience. The more you put in, the more it learns from you, and it can kind of come in and predict and learn your style and your patterns and use that when it's generating answers for you. Now, some of the things that AI can do, it can create music, it can write and create any kind of content for you. It can create images and art, right? So that's the basis of our foundation for our conversation today. So we're going to get into our chat with April. And my first question for you, and you touched on it in your introduction of yourself. What led you to begin experimenting with AI in your quilting process?
Well, it was a matter of I like to use photos and change my photos into quilts. And in order to do that with fabric collage, you need to come up with the values and kind of define shapes and values of color. So I used, I started with using like Canva and trying to use the effects and some of the apps within Canva to get to what I wanted. And it wasn't getting me quite there. So I knew some people had used Chat and Gemini in order to do a few of the things that they were doing with patterns and quilting. So I thought, I wonder if it could do what I need. So I asked it to create a coloring page. And I had a dog, and I've asked it to make a coloring page. I asked it to make a sketch. I asked it to make a paint by number. And it did all those things. Um, it took a while to get it to the point where it had learned enough about what I liked and what I didn't like for it to become more consistent in providing me with that information. So I guess I look at it that through that learning process and through me telling it what I'm looking for, that in itself is a little bit of art because I'm making decisions about what is an acceptable um, pattern and what isn't an acceptable pattern in order for me to achieve my goal. And my first one was in January when I had a customer who had asked me to create a pet collage for her and turn it into a crossbody bag. And I was feeling a little overwhelmed, maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome because I hadn't really done a custom work for someone before. So that's when I really leaned into chat to get a better idea of values and seeing the way the hair was flowing and understanding how value and the dark and the light creates the look of the dog and makes the dog look more 3D.
Okay. That's exciting. It's just amazing what it can do. Now,
Yes.
for you, when you get started, do you start with AI is going to be my sketchbook, or is it going to calculate sizes? How do you approach the use of AI when you get started in making a quilt?
For me, it's all about creating a value map. So I start with a photo that I've taken or one that a client has given to me. And I put that into AI and I ask it to remaster and remove the background because the AI needs it to have a focal point to come out with the best outcome. So many times I remove the background if it's not important to my overall end result. And so there is another decision making process that I need to make. So I need to decide, do I want the background in the photo? Do I want it gone? So that's my first decision as an artist. And then I take that and I ask it for a value map. And honestly, for the most part, that is where I can end my use of AI, is getting that value map. I don't have to take it farther. I could. I can ask it to give me a traceable template, but I could also put it into Procreate and trace it myself. And that gives me another opportunity to make artistic decisions. And that's what I like to do because it gives me back the control of what I want to include in my actual outline and template that I use.
Great. Now I'm going to go backtrack a little bit because I want you to tell us two things. The first thing is,
Mhm.
can you just describe what remaster is and what it means?
Okay, when I remaster a photo, it just means that I take that photo and when it's remastered, it helps remove the clutter and it makes the edges more crisp because AI is generating the image. It's not editing it. So it has to create it. So it needs to find the edges. And when you don't remove those edges, you sometimes get kind of a weird result. You don't get nice crisp clean lines. And so remastering the image does helps AI find the edges of the subject that you're working with and make it more workable for AI to use.
Okay, great, thank you. And you mentioned Procreate. Can you just tell us a little bit about that and how it works?
With Procreate, it is I use it on my iPad. I believe you can also do a pocket version on your phone. I prefer the iPad. I need the size. And I am just getting familiar with it. I've been working with my son and he's teaching me these things. And so mostly I just use it for pulling a photo in, tracing out my template, and then saving it back as a PNG so that I can print it out. Um, if I need it to be, and I usually resize it in Canva. So I take my image, pull it into Canva, and then I can use an image divider and print it out on my home printer so that I don't have to go to a printing company and take that time away from what I really like to do, which is fabric collage. So, so that is kind of how tech is helping me.
Okay, all right. That's a lot of steps you got going there.
I do have a lot of steps, but I'm trying very hard to keep it in my control and that I am making the artistic decisions to help myself and to end up with the end result that I want, not something that someone was just created out of thin air.
Have you ever asked AI to create an image just from a description that you've given
Yes.
it?
Actually, this flag right here, I asked AI to create a vintage style flag waving in the breeze. And it gave me an image. Oh, I asked it also to be watercolor. And so I gave it a one sentence descriptive image of what was in my head. And that's the other thing I do like about using AI is I am not an artist in the sense that I can pick up a pencil or a paintbrush and end up with what's in my head. But I can give a description to AI and have it create the image. Now, just that one image might not do it because it might not be what's in my head. But then I can say to AI, give it make it a more wavy, give it a bigger wave or increase the wave by 10%. Because if you can do it, if you can be specific and you can give it a percentage, it often will understand better. Because we have to think like a computer in order for it to understand. I kind of think of it as like trying to talk to my 4-year-old grandson. And I have to be explicit and I have to remember that he's literal. So if I say something literally, AI is going to understand it that way. And so sometimes I will say something and it'll give me something crazy. But then I look at it from a different perspective and think, oh, maybe if I said it this way. And that's why words matter so much, not only in our language, but also in, communicating with AI.
Absolutely. So, can you talk to us a little bit about the AI applications that you use? You've mentioned ChatGTP, you've mentioned Gemini. Can you tell us all the ones you've tried and your preference for any or all of them?
Okay. I use ChatGPT. I do pay for Go because with ChatGPT, the free version only gives you 5 image generations in 24 hours. And if you're trying to learn and understand, 5 generations is not going to get you where you want, especially if you're refining. And I think as an artist and someone who's being creative, that is what you need in order to keep the art, control of the art with the person and not the computer. I like to do step by step prompts. And instead of giving it one big giant prompt and letting it do its thing, I like to give it step by step. So I'll say remaster and remove background. I let it generate the image. Then I say create a value map with closed shapes and black outlines. And I let it do that. Now, if I get the result I want, then I move to the next step. But if I don't get what I want, I need to fine tune it right there because we have to remember that AI is generating the image. And every time it generates a new image, it does sometimes lose um, quality. That's why you remaster first because you need to start with your best quality. Because if you're going to do a couple of image regenerations, you want it to keep that. And so I basically then at that point, once I have my value map, if I need more detail if I believe I'm going to need more detail, like I need to understand the fur better in a pet or the feathers in a chicken, I might ask for more detail. But if it's giving me too much detail and because in fabric collage, I want to do more of an impressionistic style. I want the brain to get the idea without too much visual clutter. So I then will ask it to simplify and remove maybe 10 to 20% of the detail. And that's how I use ChatGPT. I use Gemini in a very similar way. Um, I kind of go back and forth between them. Gemini I like because it has a feature called a gem. And a gem is like a mini AI app, but you get to define its role. So you give it a job description. And so I have one, her name is Flo, and she is a quilting assistant. And she helps me when I'm trying to come up with the value maps for my patterns. I also have an app, a gem, that is my Artisan Creek marketing director. And that gem I use, what I put in the pictures that I've already, the pictures of the work that I've done, and I asked it to create a specific marketing um, item, like a post for Facebook. And then I can, refine and tweak that also. But that's how I use Gemini. I do not own the paid subscription for that one. I have 20 image generations in 24 hours, and that seems to be plenty, especially since I also own ChatGPT Go, which is $8 a month. And that seems to be sufficient for my needs. So I looked at it as, what are my needs? What will it accomplish? And do I really need to pay $20 a month? You really need to look at the different levels and what you get, and it does affect your persistent memory. Sometimes, depending on persistent memory is um, the length of time that the AI application will remember what you're discussing before you start getting drift. And drift is when it starts getting away from your original goal. So you might be doing refinements, and somewhere in the refinements, AI can get lost as to what your original image was. And you'll get something really off the wall. And you've got to go back in and remind AI what you're doing. So you might have to re-add a picture or an image and say, start with this one. So I might have to go back in my chat and save it part of the chat and then put it back in. Anymore, because I use it, I've discovered what works best for me as an artist. I don't usually get into that situation because I know that for me, using it to create value maps is its most important tool for me. Um, as far as other AI applications, of course, I have it in everyday life with it's just built in. I mean, there's so much of it that we didn't even think about was actually AI. I mean, Siri, Alexa, uh, the Google app. I'm not sure what that one's called, but I know some of my kids use that one, and it's kind of all around us, and it's been here for a long time. We just didn't understand
Yes.
that it was already there. I mean, it's amazing if you go into AI Quilter's digital muse book. She has a whole timeline, and I was so shocked when I read her book to discover what AI was and how far back it goes.
Oh, fantastic. I've asked in the chat if anybody uses an AI tool, what tool do they use? Either in just for general use or for artistic endeavors. We've got Linda uses Chat GPT and Copilot. Um, we've got Jerry using Gemini, Perplexity. I'm not familiar with all of those. Perplexity is new to me, but it's nice to see that some of the folks out there in the audience are experimenting with
Mhm.
this as well. So you've given us a great background and foundation on how useful AI is in quilting. I want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the pros and cons of using AI in quilting. For you, it sounds like color value is really a great pro and something that you really rely on that is helpful in your creation of your designs. Are there any other aspects of it that you really rely on heavily and count on AI to deliver when you're creating a quilt?
Sometimes I use it for fabric audition because
Okay.
fabric is not cheap, and I don't want to cut up my fabric and test it if I have a way of doing it a little differently. So there's a variety of ways I can do it. I can ask it to provide me with batiks that would fit my value chart. and ask it to generate my collage using those batiks. I can also take images of my batiks that I have and put them in. Maybe I've already made the decisions, and I can ask it to use these specific batiks to create the image, and then I can kind of test my ideas without actually using up my resources. And I can stretch, my fabric a little bit farther because I'm not having so many errors or changes in judgment as I go along the way. So that is another huge thing that I like with using AI is the fabric audition. So I will do that. Um, for my actual creation, I don't think I use it much more than that. Other than I do create images, like I described the flag. I had a request to teach a class with a flag. And so I had to think about it. Okay, how do I want this flag to look? What style do I want it in? And how do I get an image of a flag and have it not be something that is against copyrights, et cetera, which this is a gray area still. But I'm not currently selling the flag. I'm just using the flag as a image, and it's not too, I try to avoid things that, it doesn't have the 13 stripes. It doesn't have the number of stars. It's not an exact replica. It's a something that gives an illusion to a patriotic symbol for us. And so I try to be careful of all those things. There's so much to think about when you're using AI.
We had a discussion a couple weeks ago about copyright, so I definitely understand that
Yes.
part. Can you think of other than having lots of iterations that may send AI down a different path than what you started on? Are there any other cons for you that just make you say, "Well, I'm only going to go this far in using it"?
Yes, because it starts to affect your credibility and your integrity because of the way that people view it. So if I post something and people assume that it's AI generated, then they will immediately um, start attacking whether it's my creativity or AI's creativity. I've actually had those words thrown at me. And, I was able to respond with, oh, I should have worded this differently. And the person then realized that, oh, she's not just, you know, telling it something, getting what it gives back, and then sharing it with the world. People don't understand that it's a refinement process. Although the reason that that happens is because some people don't use it as a refinement process. So I think that the biggest con is people's understanding of the use of AI and the fact that it gets used so differently by different people. I mean, it's kind of the same as the scammers and the hackers on our social media platforms. They kind of ruin it, the value of it for everyone else. And so when people are not keeping in mind that there's an ethical and moral responsibility to using AI, it starts impacting how those of us who are trying to keep that in the forefront are perceived.
Thank you. So we have a comment in the chat that says, "I don't use any AI. I'm trying my best to stick to allowing myself to stretch and grow within myself." In your opinion, when you use AI, who's the true creator? Who can attribution be given to, or should attribution be given to?
I think that depends on how you're using AI. So if I'm using AI and I have taken the photo. So it's I have either taken the photo or I have come up with the idea in my head. I am giving it descriptive words. I'm also not accepting just any old iteration. I'm looking for what's in my head. And so I think if someone is using it in that way, I think that's okay. I think that I am the one that is creating the item because it's my ideas. I am redirecting um, AI to give me a visual of what I want. The same with my photos. It's my photo to begin with. I am just asking AI to help me find the values in my photos so that it makes and divide them out and create them into smaller shapes so that's easier for me to be able to then choose which parts of that photo I'm going to use in order to create the final image.
Oh,
So that is because I did that with this flamingo.
very nice.
So it was a picture I took. I put it into AI. I asked it to give me because I didn't know how to handle the water. How am I going to show the water? How am I going to show movement in the water? But I decided it gave me, I refined the water many times to get it to the vision that I wanted to bring out in the final product. And the same with the flamingo. So I
Very nice.
guess because as long as I'm keeping control of the final outcome, I think then, I'm the one who um, is creating the art. I'm getting help with it. I guess it would be similar to if I had hired an artist to and had to keep describing the art to them and paid the artist to do the work to get me to the point that I could then take it to create the rest of it. I think it's just a matter of we need to make sure that we point out that we did have AI assistance in creating whatever part of what we did. I think whenever I am doing something, I need to give AI value map created by AI. I need people to know that. We need transparency, and that will help people understand that, okay, AI did the value map, but she did the rest.
All right, that goes in along with my next question. Do you think that AI generated images inspire you, or do you think it dilutes originality?
Again, I really think everything is a gray area and it's how it's being used. It's really about intent. For me, my intent is to um, get my ideas out. Because if I can't get it out enough for me to take it to the next step, because I have so many ideas. My friends are always asking me, do you sleep? Do you ever stop thinking about these things? I'm like, not really. My brain is always spinning. So it does help me get my ideas out so I can actually go to sleep. I can say generate this, but usually I tend to look to my photos. So I start with my photos a lot. It's only occasionally that I'll have an idea and I'll say give it a sentence, a very descriptive sentence and start there. But most of the time I start with my photos.
Right. So along with your ideas and actually producing something for visually for someone else to enjoy, do you think that something generated with this type of technology can still carry emotional meanings and also do storytelling for the viewer?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because sometimes we can't, um, we have these ideas, and our ideas are the story. And if I think, you know, and if you think about it, there are people that have disabilities and special needs in our world. And I can see so many areas. I was a teacher in my last career, and I was a reading specialist and a literacy coach. And I'm seeing all these applications come up, and I'm thinking about how it could open doors for people. And if you think about it, I do not have the gift of being able to draw a beautiful portrait or a beautiful whatever. You know, I can draw a little bit, but it doesn't come out how my brain wants it to come out. And this gives me the ability to actually see what I'm thinking come to life on paper. And then I can bring it to life in fabric. And I just know that there are so many people out there that they have things that they would could be very talented at doing, and they have ideas in their heads, but possibly they can't do it with their hands. And at least they can get their ideas out there. And as far as emotion, what if we were trying to connect with the past and we had old photographs? And those old photographs, um, you know, over time, they start to deteriorate. But is what, and I've tried this with a couple of the photos of my mom and my grandmother, and they were kind of fuzzy and blurry. And I asked it to remaster the photo, and it came back with a nice, crisp picture from what I had. And that's very emotional for me because now I have something that is just, it just brings it a little more fine tuned. And it allows me, if I want to, I can take that picture and I can turn it into something else.
Okay, great. So in your process and in looking
Mhm.
forward as we move through time and technology gets stronger and better and more efficient, what possibilities excite you about the use of AI in quilting?
I just think it opens doors, and I think it opens doors to more people being able to maybe get into pattern making. Um, I think it also maybe will, because people have interest in technology, that they'll see the opportunity and then they'll start exploring, oh, that was created with, that quote was created with, you know, there was AI involved. Well, how does AI do that? And so by that, now we're getting them interested into a subject area that they might explore that they didn't even know they might have had an interest in. So I can see AI leading us into exploring things that maybe we were too afraid to explore before.
All right. I'm gonna read a comment that's in the chat that I think is very interesting.
Okay.
This person says, I start with the idea and then I guide AI with her colors, her shapes, her design, and then AI gives her options that she can develop in her head. And to her, it's no different than writing or writing an article or writing
Mm-hmm.
something. So it sounds like for this person, AI is something that they actually employ in their quilting. Somebody else is talking about EQ, electric quilt,
Yes.
when it first came out. I'm assuming that as time moves on, EQ, we're on number 8 right now, will become far more sophisticated than it is right now,
Oh,
and will
I agree.
probably pull AI into
Mm-hmm.
using that program, that software as well.
Yeah, I think that it's here to stay, and I think we're going to see it more and more. Um, that was kind of my view of starting the group that I started, was so that if people are going to use it anyway, let's teach them how to use it right.
So
Now,
do you
the
think that
definition of
AI, I'm sorry, go
right,
ahead. Mhm.
the definition of right is quite subjective. But, you know, at least if we can help guide people to use it in ethical ways and not use it to copy someone else's work.
Mhm.
Use it to generate your ideas and help you develop your skills, because I think people will become more and more detailed in their work as they have the ability to be able to feel confident that they can.
Absolutely. So we're going to we have a few slides, and April has some of her work that we'd like to show. And so I'm gonna go right into that right now. And here we go. And so a year ago, used ChatGTP on my own to try and figure out a modern quilt application because I was stumped, and modern
Mhm,
quilting is not really my thing. So I went into ChatGTP and I said, hey, create a modern quilt using circles and swirly lines. And that was the prompt that I gave it. And I asked it to use bright colors also because I like bright colors. And this is the picture that ChatGTP gave me. So I went on to create that quilt, or my rendition of that quilt,
mhm,
just from what Chat GTP gave me as an example. So for me, it was an experiment,
mhm,
and ever since then, I have been hooked on using it to generate ideas because I am not an artist, and when paper goes to pen goes to paper, things don't work out so well. So I kind of give it nebulous ideas, and it kind of creates things, and then it inspires me, and then I can move from there. So that was
mhm,
my first dabbling with
mhm.
AI in creating a quilt design
Yeah.
for me. Okay. So we're going to go into April's work, April's thought process, and which she's giving you a little bit on, and she can elaborate a little bit more with her own business, Artisan Creek Studio. So you've got your first slide up here, April. So if you want to talk to us about your concept and your process and how you get from point A to point B.
Okay, I can't see the slides, so I'm not really sure what one is up.
Okay, so we've got the first slide is your Artisan Creek Studio, and it's got your concept, it's got the whole flow of your
Oh, the
process.
flow of my process. Okay. That slide is kind of just trying to show how intertwined um the process is with going back and forth between um the AI process and there we go. Now I see it. um and it just helps show how AI and working um with your hands goes hand in hand, and how it's not where a lot of times people think it's AI or it's you. And for me, it's both. We're working in harmony together to come up with an answer. It's more like a collaboration. So if I was sitting down with you, Cheryl, and I was bouncing things off of you and saying, what do you think about these colors? And what do you think about that? Well, AI is my person to, or my being to bounce things off of and get ideas. So that's really what this slide is saying. It's really just showing how the different parts of my workflow, I use AI, but at the same time, it's not just AI. I am making the decisions. I am doing parts of the process. I can have AI, make my traceable template. But if AI makes my traceable template, I don't decide which lines get put in and which don't. So that's why I choose to take it out and put Procreate, especially if I'm going to sell it as a pattern eventually, because I need it to be my process, not AI's process. And that's when copyright starts getting involved. Because the majority of your work needs to be produced by you and not by AI if you want to be able to copyright your work.
Okay. All right. Can we move to the next slide, please?
And this is the one I talked about, the flag that was behind me. And that one, someone asked me to design for a class that I'm teaching in Manistee, Michigan, in May 30th, actually. It's coming up pretty quick. And so I will be teaching some people how to create this flag. This one is my simpler version, but I also have created more samples to show how by adding shading and highlights, shading when the flag is moving away from you and highlights when the flag is moving towards you, and how that can create a 3D effect in your fabric collage. And that's where the value mapping comes in to play to help create the movement.
Can you give us a brief description on how you go from the actual picture to pattern pieces, or how you actually get your students to create this in fabric?
Okay, so is what they'll do is I will give them the value map, and then I give them a piece of parchment paper and a pencil, and they will trace out. We will talk about the lines that they want to put into their project, and they will make the choices about how they trace the value map onto the parchment paper. Then they will have a packet of six to seven different batik fabrics in various values of each color. And they will then be able to, they have scissors. The fabric is already pre uh, set with the steam seam that I use, just to save a step and speed up the class. And so then I will teach them how they will start cutting different shapes. A lot of times we start with a triangle and then we just randomly cut shapes. I also teach them about SAS tracing, which is where they peel back the steam seam. They lay the paper part of the steam seam with the wrong side of the part that goes to the wrong side of the fabric. They lay that on top of their, maybe part of the flag, and they can trace on that paper the shape that they'd like to cut out, flip it back over and cut it out, steam it back together so it's adhered. So they have iron wands that they will be using, and they cut that little piece out and then they can apply it. And when you do it that way, it's cut the right direction and you don't have to worry about mirroring. So that is kind of how they get to the cutting process. And then you're auditioning the fabric still, because until you adhere fabric to fabric, you haven't committed. So you can lay out your shading, your highlights on the parchment paper because it's got the sticky back of the steam seam that sticks just enough. And you can have it all laid out. You can also use that little iron wand to only touch the parts that are touching the parchment paper to help hold it to the parchment paper so that it doesn't move on you. And I have actually steamed an item and said, no, 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 that's not right. I don't like it. And I've taken it back apart. All you have to do is heat it up again and pull it apart. And you can pull apart some of the pieces. Now, I'm not going to say that it's perfect and you might have to replace items because you might ruin your fabric in the process. But Um, that's how I go about doing that. And once I get it all done on it wasn't, I didn't apply it to that background fabric till the flag and the pole were completely done. It's still on the parchment paper. And then I steam the whole thing to make sure that it kind of turns into one big sticker. Then I peel it off the parchment paper and I lay it onto my background fabric. Now, sometimes, like with the flamingo, I actually did the whole thing collaged. But sometimes I just do an item or an object and then I adhere it to the fabric after. And this particular one was mounted on artist canvas.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes it just depends on what the purpose of the item is.
All right. Very nice. Can we go on to the next slide, please?
And this is Finn. This is the one that started me off with AI more strongly, I guess, because I wanted Finn. I wanted to be able to see that variation in the fabrics. I wanted to see the dark and the light. And like on his nose, being able to see where the highlights are. And that's when I took it from Canva into and so Finn is actually my very first client project, and he's only my second dog. So I was happy with his results. There's lots of things, of course, I see that I would like to improve, but I was still very happy with the progress and the learning that I'm achieving.
I love the fur is just great. It's the one, and
Yeah,
I can see where color value is very important to you with a dog with just kind of one color hair.
yeah, he was, because I saw him every day. He lived across from me at the RV resort in Texas. And so I saw him every day. I knew what he looked like. I interacted with him all the time. So, but to try, and I wanted to bring out who he was. I wanted the expression from the photo to come out and make sure that I had some 3D depth involved. So I didn't want him to be flat.
Came out great. Can we have the next slide, please?
And the cone flowers are the collaged item. And this is my interchangeable pillow panels that I create and sell at markets. And they're also another area where technology gets involved because my embroidery machine, I pull up designs that other people have made, and I use those, such as the February 14th. That was a Kimberbill design. But the Cottontail Market design, it was something that I had bought a stencil through Chalk Couture because I used to do that. And I wanted it to be on a pillow, but I didn't want to ink it. I wanted to be able to embroider it. So I pulled it into my digitizing software for Bernina, and it did the digitizing. So that's just one more place where I didn't create that. I wouldn't try to sell that as a pattern because it's not my pattern. I didn't create it. I put it into a digitizing software and I just said, digitize this picture. There wasn't a whole lot in it that was me, other than choosing the fabric, choosing the final product is me, as far as I'm choosing the thread and I'm choosing the fabric and I'm putting together the panel. But the item on the panel was done by the digitizing software. Now, if I took that and I did it with one of the designs that I created, then I could maybe get closer to that. But right now, I'm not at the point where I understand digitizing and stitching and all that software. But then the cone flower, that is my design.
Okay. All right. And can we have the next one?
And is, this is one that I created from a pattern. Um, it really is an applique pattern that I found in a book. I altered some of it as I traced and put things together to have it be what I wanted. But ultimately, this one was put together into a pillow panel that was more. So this one was more product oriented. It wasn't about the creation of it. It was and it wasn't, because I chose the fabrics. I chose, how the collage goes together, but my original design did not come from me. That came from a pattern. And but I don't think that the art goes out of it if you start with a pattern. And the cone flowers again are my design. And honestly, I cannot keep the fabric collage in stock. It's my first thing that goes every time. And I've I have some that I did. I just took a pillow panel or a panel and I made it into um a a panel for a pillow, and those do not sell. I will not make those any longer. The only thing that sells is my embroidery designs and my fabric collage, and my fabric collage are my favorite because that's where I can be creative and I can really use my art.
Very nice.
And this cardinal is he's not finished yet. He's in process. He needs to have his free motion stitching. I still need to add his eye, and then he will get turned into a panel.
Very nice. Very nice, April. I truly love your work, and
Thank you.
I think it's inspiring. As we have our last couple minutes, I want to ask you, what advice would you give quilters who are afraid of AI?
Um, I think you just need to dip your toe in. And if you if you are afraid to do it on your own, find somebody who understands it and have them help guide you. I mean, that's what I do in my Artist and Create Studio group is I help guide people in using AI. I have a set of guides made up to help people learn how to log in, add the app, log in, and I'm right there by your side as just somebody to help, a coach. So all you have to do is look me up on Artisan Creek Studio on Facebook, and I can help you dip your toe in. I also try to keep the focus on the creative part of things. I I take it at your pace, what your journey is, and I think that's what people need. I think you need to go as fast or as slow as you're comfortable with. And you try it. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe that's not your method. But what if it is and you didn't check it out?
I like the sound of that. What do you think quilting will look like in 10 years from now?
Oh gosh, it's hard to say. It's like things just keep changing all the time. Um, I'm hoping that the machines aren't just doing it for us. I really don't think, I think with quilting, there will always be a human element because it's just what quilting is. It's like the fabric selection. I mean, the cutting, the whole thing. It just I don't know. I get so much out of looking at fabric, touching fabric. I mean, I can spend hours in a quilt store. My husband thinks I spend way too much money in a quilt store, especially for living in an RV. It's like, where are we going to put that? Where are we going to put that? And I'm like, find a nook and a cranny. I guess I better work harder and faster and get things made and sold. But yeah, I think we're going to have a lot more tools and a lot more help. I think that's the biggest thing. And I think our job and our responsibility is going to be making sure that people understand the value of keeping the artists at the forefront and the technology as the tool.
I like that. Artistry at the forefront, technology as the tool. I want
Yeah.
to thank you, April, so much for joining the Uncut Thread today. Your input, your ideas, your thoughts have been well received with the audience and just a wealth of information and inspiration.
Oh,
And
thank
with that,
you.
I'd just like to part with just a couple of words before we leave. But I just want to say in closing that quilting has always been a reflection of its time, and every generation of quilters has always adapted new tools or new techniques or new ways of expressing their creativity. So, in that respect, artificial intelligence may challenge us as
Mhm.
well. It can inspire us,
Exactly.
even unsettle us, but it will always invite us to ask deeper questions about, originality and meaningfulness and what lies in the true heart of our quilting. So, as
Mhm.
AI may generate ideas, quilters bring them to life.
Exactly.
So I want to thank everybody for joining us today for this episode of the Uncut Thread. We'll continue the conversation with another episode next week. So in that, stay curious and most importantly, keep creating. Thanks, everyone. Have a
And
great
thank you
rest
for
of your
having
day.
me.
You're welcome, April. Thank you.
Bye bye.